Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how we can use some angle relationships. So we're going to talk about four special relationships with angles in this video. They are adjacent angles, complementary angles, supplementary angles, and vertical angles. So let's talk about the definition for each of those, and then we'll look at three separate examples. One where we just identify a pair of these angles, the next where we solve some simple expressions, and then the next where we do a little bit more complicated expressions to solve for some of these angle relationships. All right, so let's jump in. What are adjacent angles? Adjacent angles share a common side and have the same vertex. Okay, so we'll find an example of those in our diagram in just a minute. And I'll scroll down so we can go ahead and see our diagram. Then we have complementary angles. Complementary angles just add up to 90 degrees, so they occur at a 90-degree angle. And then supplementary angles, the sum of their measures is 180 degrees, so they would make up a straight line angle. And then lastly, vertical angles, they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. And they're going to have the same measure because they are both supplementary to the same angle. So we would say that vertical angles are congruent and that their measures are equal to each other. All right, so let's jump into example one. We have this diagram here. We want to just identify two adjacent angles. Now there's more than two of these that we're going to look at here, of these four, but let's just find two and let's go with that. So for adjacent, we want to share a common side and have the same vertex. So let's focus on this part of our diagram right here. So I noticed that I have angle GAB, so let's say angle GAB, and this angle here, we could say CAB or BAC. So let's say angle BAC, right? So those both share vertex A, and they both share side AB. So those would be adjacent angles, okay? So let's see if we could take off our yellow lines here. There we go. All right, now let's move on to complementary. Complementary, we're always looking for that 90-degree angle box. So we see that we have one of those right here. So we see these two angles here. So GAF would be one angle, angle GAF. And the other one would be angle FAE. I think I was on my eraser there. All right, FAE. So let's do that, angle FAE. All right, so those would be our two complementary angles. And now let's move on to supplementary. Supplementary, we said they're going to form a 180-degree angle. So let's take a look at, let's see. We have a couple different options here. And for supplementary, remember, it doesn't just have to be two angles, right? It could be more than two. So we look along, we have a couple straight lines. Like we have this line here, we have this line here, we have this line here, right? So really, any angles that make up the angles that are on that line, we could say are supplementary. So let's just go with this line right here, and let's go with these angles here, okay? So let me take that away so we can look at it. So let's go angle FAE, so angle FAE. Let's go angle EAD, and lastly, angle DAC. Okay, all right, and lastly, let's do vertical. So let's see if we can take away the yellow here without getting rid of our diagram. There we go, there's one, and good. All right, so now vertical angles, they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. So here's our intersection here, right? So let's look at, how about this angle here, GAB and EAD. Those would be good. So angle GAB and angle EAD. Those would be two good vertical angles to go with, okay? All right, so now let's solve some problems here. So for number two, we have this diagram, and it's a straight line angle, so those are supplementary angles. So we know that this angle 115 and this angle X should equal 180 degrees. So if we just subtract 115, we can solve this simple equation. So we're gonna get X is equal to, and this would be 65 degrees. Okay, so then we could say, okay, 65 plus 115, that's going to give me 180. So we checked our work there, and we are good. Okay, number three, we have some vertical angles here, and one angle is given a 90-degree angle box. So this one's actually pretty easy. X is just 90 degrees because it's a vertical angle with our right angle, and we know that vertical angles have the same measure. All right, number four, we have two angles that are combining, or they make up a 90-degree angle. So we're going to say 2x minus 3 plus x should be equal to 90. So here we have a 2x and an x, so that'd be 3x minus 3 equals 90. So now we could add 3, and we get 3x is equal to 93. okay? So now we can just divide both sides by 3, and we're going to get x is equal to 31, okay? All right, let's look at one last example. We could solve for 3 angles here. So we have our diagram. We want to find the measure of angle DFC first. So DFC, that's going to be represented here by this 12x. I noticed I have a 6x here, and that this angle would be vertical to this angle down here, angle EFD. So we could actually say that 12x plus 6x should be equal to 90. 12x is the angle we're trying to find, DFC, and 6x would be EFD. So this would be 18x is equal to 90. And now we can just divide both sides by 18. So we do 90 divided by 18, and that tells us that x is equal to 5. Now, that's not actually our answer because we want to solve for the angle. So we know that DFC was 12x, and we're going to plug in 5 for x. So we're actually going to get a 60-degree angle measure for angle DFC, okay? All right. Now, we know what x is, that's helpful, so now let's continue solving. So the measure of angle AFE, so that's actually this angle right here, okay? Well, notice that that is supplementary to angle AFB, and AFB is represented by 6x, and we know that x is equal to 5, right? So AFB is equal to 6 times 5, which is equal to 30. So if AFB is 30, then we know that 30 plus angle AFE should equal 180. So if we subtract our 30, we're going to get the measure of angle AFE to be 150 degrees. All right. And lastly, the measure of angle AFC, which would be this angle here, AFC. Well, we know BFC would be 90, right, because it's supplementary to a 90-degree angle. And AFB, we just said, was 30, right? So this would be 30 plus 90, which is 120 degrees. Okay, so that's a little bit about some angle relationships.